Now, we've invited our next guest onto Recession Island, and we're going to see if he wants to stay or go. Please welcome into the show Keith Fitz-Gerald. Keith, thanks for being on. You probably feel it like I do. It has been, if you're in that camp of my camp, it has been getting a little lonelier and lonelier as a lot of folks are saying, hey, we've done it. We've orchestrated this soft landing. Away we go. I don't think it's that easy.
I don't either, but I do tell you this. I think Jerome Powell is as wrong about rates and labor and where he's going as he was with the whole transitory thing. So I think he ought to be off on his own island. We'll send him coconuts, Scott.
All right, so where do we go? I mean, what are your thoughts then?
Well, I think here we've got a very interesting scenario. The market clearly does not respect what Chairman Powell has to say. In fact, the only people who do, I submit, are highly leveraged traders who are worried about the cost of carry. Investors have figured out they need to look beyond that. Some of the people working out there need to look beyond that. So, yes, we're going to argue about rates all day long, but the fact is the economy is narrowing up. The big companies are moving ahead. Many of the mom and pops are digging in their heels, and they're surviving. They're thriving. It may not be like the good old days, but you know what? It's a lot less bad than it used to be. So I'm in the crystal ball camp of I think things are going to get better. I actually believe, Scott, that we are exiting a recession, and the fact that they haven't called it one yet is on the academics, not on the people doing what we do every day.
All right. I mean, that's a fair point, but let me come back at you a little bit to have a little bit of fun banter between the two of us. I know that, auto loans are spiking. We've got foreclosures that are spiking yesterday or the day before. Now, I know we discount what the Fed has to say, but a couple of economists at the Fed said that they think about 37% of America's corporations are in dire shape because they are already over leveraged. They've seen rates rise very quickly at an historic pace that we talk about all the time. And so they're not going to be able to A, borrow more, B, hire anybody, or C, expand. So we could see a slowdown there. And then with the student loans coming back on board in August, September, of taking $16 billion out of the equation there on a monthly basis. I don't know. I just feel as though my danger Will Robinson yellow light is flashing. I can't. Yes, exactly right. I can't just get on board that it's going to be, we're all good and the black clouds are behind us.
Well, don't get me wrong. I don't think we're in for smooth sailing by any stretch of the imagination. But just keep in mind, Scott, respectfully, these are the same guys that thought transitory was no problem. These are the same people who got us into this mess and missed the crisis in formation. So I would submit, the PhDs over there in the Fed ought to be thinking about NASA or Elon Musk and SpaceX, where they're hiring real smart people who actually know where the world's going as opposed to where it's been. And I say that respectfully because they're not stupid. They're just using busted models. And that's the problem here. Because the economy wants to grow. That's how capital works. That's how success works. That's why the companies are moving ahead. That's why the GDP was just revised upward. That's why the markets are going in opposite direction, even though the Fed doesn't want them to.
So, yeah, there's a lot there that I can unwrap. Okay, so I'll give you this, all right? I'll say that I think that you can see things getting rosier with artificial intelligence, and a lot of the markets are being held up by a few stocks. I think that's a fair point to say. But I also think that there's a lot of stocks that aren't doing very well. And we also could have a decent stock market with an economy that's not doing very well at all, i.e. Barack Obama, right? I mean, that can happen too, can it?
Exactly. And so here's the thing. And, the way I look at this, and we've spent, I don't know how many thousands of hours looking at this from a research perspective, computing time. The markets very clearly can focus on profit. So it's possible to be a market bull and an economic bear. That's how capitalism works. And so it's typical that earnings, which are beginning to tick upward again, typically do so anywhere from 3 to 6 months before the economy or the economists recognize that that's happening. So if you're an investor, now's the time to lean in. Now's the time to reinvest. Now's the time to focus on those great names. It won't be smooth, but you got to hate every minute and do it anyway.
Well, I think this could be an opportunity. I don't disagree with that at all. But I'll say this, too. Whenever this topic comes up and I say that I'm in the camp of I'm on Recession Island, I think things could get bad. People throw the first two things that come out of their mouths are the JOLTS numbers, right? The job openings, and then obviously 3.7% unemployment, right? The jobs numbers look pretty good. We're very good, really, historically low. If they begin to crack, I think that would then ultimately make the consumer crack, right? The consumer is kind of living on vapors, I think, a little bit right now. No savings left. They've jacked up their credit cards. That's where I think that I'm going to be watching here in the short term. Because Morgan Stanley came out, I don't know, about a couple days ago and said that they expect a negative jobs print within the next 2 jobs numbers. I don't know if that's going to happen. But if we see that happen with the jobs, that would make the consumer kind of crack. And then I think that's where things get dicey.
Well, again, I share that opinion, but I also am taking the high ground on this one, Scott. I think that those numbers are more cooked in the Christmas goose. They don't reflect the economy that presently exists. So job openings are flawed because companies post openings. They have to. It's the law. They have to post them. Whether or not they fill them is different. What we see is the economy narrowing up because great companies are doing great things. Now, are the rest of us going to go along for a ride? We can debate that all day long, but you know as well as I do, the small business owners, they've got to make it work. Yes, they're wrung out, but there's hope, there's aspiration, there's brilliance there. I'm not going to give up on America. So, you know what? I'm off Recession Island. I think we're not going to call it that, but I'm going to go sailing.
All right, well, I'm watching your ship sail away, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in the short term. No, it's a great conversation to have. I really appreciate you coming on and playing along with us. That's a fun segment. Keith Fitz-Gerald, you're fantastic.
Hi, it's Keith here. Thanks for checking out today's highlight clip. What'd you think? Did I make sense? Is there something you'd like to add? Make sure you leave a comment down below, and of course, click subscribe to keep up right here on YouTube, or sign up for the email newsletter at the link below. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram for my real-time thoughts on markets, analysis, and a whole lot more.